Kony case, confirmation of charges at the International Criminal Court, third session. Let's go and see what's exactly taking place.
Good day, everyone. And before we go on, a bit of housekeeping about tomorrow. After some thinking on the matter, we've decided that tomorrow, unless someone changed their entire schedule because of what we'd planned earlier, and if you have, please say so. But we've decided that, barring that, we would start at 9:30 tomorrow. We would have a regular day. And if we need to, we will also go on Thursday. All right? So we've already given the time periods, and we're not trying to cut anyone's time. What you've been given, you've been given. Yes? All right. Okay, then. So I believe we were continuing with the prosecution. All right.
The prosecution has the floor. Evidence Channel 2.
For the record, I am Melissa Sims, and as indicated earlier by Deputy Prosecutor Niang, I will address the chamber as it relates to the LRA's attack on the 7 IDP camps. Madam President, Your Honors, between October 2003 and June 2004, the LRA fighters carried out a calculated and brutal series of attacks on 7 IDP camps across northern Uganda. These attacks were carried out pursuant to Mr. Kony's standing order to attack civilians in northern Uganda. As Your Honors heard earlier today from my colleague Leonie von Braun, Mr. Kony regularly issued these orders to attack, kill, and mistreat civilians living in the IDP camps. The prosecution's evidence, Your Honors, establishes that Mr. Kony perceived the civilians living in IDP camps as supportive of the Ugandan government. Therefore, he saw them as the enemies of the LRA. Secondly, Mr. Kony's orders were also motivated by his aim to sustain the LRA. So these orders included the orders to obtain food, livestock, and people. These attacks varied only in the commanders who led them and the intensity of the attacks. However, the pattern of violence remained unchanged throughout the charged attacks, which targeted the Lango, Teso, and Acholi regions. The prosecution alleges, as set out in the document containing the charges, that as it concerns the attack on the 7 IDP camps, that Mr. Kony is criminally responsible for counts 1 to 13, and that's attack on the civilian population, murder, attempted murder, torture, in the alternative, other inhumane acts such as severe abuse and mistreatment, cruel treatment, enslavement, pillaging, destruction of property, and persecution. Your Honors, on your screen is a dynamic 2025 Google Earth map, which was taken from open source, and we're being taken into the region of northern Uganda with a focus on the 7 IDP camps which were attacked. While these attacks on the 7 IDP camps are the only charges before the court concerning these IDP camps, the prosecution wishes to highlight to the chamber that there were other attacks taking place falling within a wider pattern of violence in the region, as detailed in the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief. Your Honors, the charges against the IDP camps, as stated earlier, occurred between the 10th of October 2003 and the 8th of June 2004 under the authority of Mr. Kony. The prosecution will now provide a chronological overview of each attack, starting with Pajoli IDP camp. This was located in Aru County in Padair District, and it was attacked on the 10th of October 2003. At the time, between 15,000 and 30,000 civilians lived in the camp. This attack was carried out by the late Vincent Otti as the overall commander, together with Luquia and Ongwen. These commanders were supported by fighters from Control Alta, Trinkle, and the senior brigades. On the 10th of October, the same day of the attack, Vincent Otti reported the attack to Mr. Joseph Kony. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to ISO logbook UGA OTP 02540725 at page 1070, where this is detailed. 4 months later, Abia Camp was located in Marotta County in Lira District, and the LRAs attacked this camp, as stated earlier, 4 months later, on or about the 4th of February 2004. At the time, between 12,000 and 15,000 civilians lived at that IDP camp. Okot Odiambo was the commander in charge. He led the attack against Abia as part of the LRA's campaign against the Lango region, where this camp was situated. The prosecution's evidence establishes that Mr. Kony was well aware of this attack. On the 12th of February 2004, again, the prosecution is relying on a logbook. We have Mr. Kony reiterating that the
12th Council?
Your Honors, the 12th of February is in relation to the date on which Mr. Kony makes a communication in relation to the attack on Abia, therefore establishing that he was aware of this attack, which took place on the 4th of February. In this communication, Your Honors, Mr. Kony reiterated to all of the LRA fighters that the tactics that were used in the Abia camp, where many persons were killed, should be adopted by all LRA units. And the prosecution refers, Your Honors, to ISO logbook UGA OTP 0061 0002 at page 0069. 17 days after the attack on Abia camp, on or about the 21st of February 2004, Barlonio IDP camp was attacked. This camp was located in Irute North County in the Lira district. At the time, between 1,000 to 4,800 civilians lived in that camp. And again, Odiambo was the leader of this attack. He was supported by around 63 fighters. And as you have heard earlier from my colleague, Ms. Von Braun, on the 13th of March, 2004, Mr. Kony promoted Odiambo to Brigadier General, which is shortly after this attack on Barlonio. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to UPDF logbook, UGA, OTP 0254-2284 at page 2582. About 2 months later, on or about the 29th of April 2004, Odek IDP camp was attacked. And this camp was located in Omoro County, and this was in Gulu district. At the time, between 2,000 and 3,000 civilians lived at the camp, and this attack was carried out under Dominic Ongwen's command, supported by fighters from the Senior and Gilver brigades. On the 30th of April 2004, a day after the attack on Odek IDP camp, the prosecution evidence establishes that Mr. Ongwen reported to Mr. Kony that he had attacked Odek IDP camp. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to UGA OTP 0259-0065 at page 0066, where this report is detailed. "18 days later, on or about the 16th of May, 2004, Pagak IDP camp was attacked. This camp was located in Kilak County, also in the Gulu district. At the time, around 14,000 civilians lived at the camp. Oti, joined by Thomas Coelho and supported by fighters from Control Alta and the Gilver brigades, carried out the attack. Your Honors, earlier Counsel Atim from the defense brought to the Chamber's attention the proceedings against Mr. Coelho in Uganda, and the prosecution will expound on this very briefly to indicate that Mr. Coelho was charged for his role in the attack on Pagak IDP camp. The matter proceeded before the Ugandan High Court in the International Crimes Division, and the honorable judges found him guilty of the charges, and he has since been sentenced to 40 years imprisonment. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to the judgment at UGA OTP 000-01132. On the 17th of May, 2004, a day after the attack on Pagak IDP camp, Oti reported the attack on the Pagak IDP camp to Mr. Kony. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to UPDF logbook UGA OTP 0255-0228 at page 0249. 3 days later, on or about the 19th of May, 2004, Lukodi IDP camp was attacked. This camp was located in Aswa County, also in Gulu District. At the time, around 7,000 civilians lived at the camp. Vincent Otti and Dominic Ongwen, together with fighters from Senior and Gilver brigades, carried out the attack. The prosecution, Your Honors, refers the chamber to UPDF logbook UGA OTP 02542982 at page 3050. Here again, Your Honors, the evidence establishes that the now convicted Dominic Ongwen reported the attack to Mr. Kony. He says that he caused havoc in Lukodi camp and that he decided to kill all living things in that camp. About 3 weeks later, on or about the 8th of June 2004, a Buck IDP camp was attacked. This camp was located in the Guy sub-county in Apache district. At the time, between 7,000 and 13,000 civilians lived at the camp. Ongwen, with support from the Senior Brigade, carried out the attack. A day later, on the 9th of June 2004, Mr. Ongwen reported the attack to Mr. Kony. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to UPDF logbook UGA OTP 02542982 at page 3078, where this information is detailed. For 4 of the attacks, namely Pajule, Odek, Lukodi, and a Buck, Trial Chamber 9 of the ICC has tried, convicted, and sentenced Dominic Ongwen to 25 years imprisonment. Your Honors, ultimately, it is the prosecution's case that Mr. Kony is criminally responsible for the attack on all 7 IDP camps. Your Honors, before turning to the evidence on these attacks, the prosecution takes a moment to address the contextual elements of the charges. And earlier, the chamber heard from counsel for the LRV, who flagged the substantial overlap in the evidence between the Ongwen case and the Kony case. Your Honors, the prosecution immediately highlights that it is this chamber who will make final determination on the evidence and whether it meets the sufficiency test in relation to the contextual elements. However, Your Honors, in relation to Trial Chamber 9, they held that at the relevant time of the charges, there was a non-international armed conflict in the region of northern Uganda between the LRA and the UPDF, and that all contextual elements of war crimes are met on the evidence presented to them. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to paragraphs 2809 to 2812 of the Ongwen trial judgment. Second, Trial Chamber 9 held that all contextual elements of crimes against humanity are met based on the evidence before that chamber, and they found that the LRA engaged in a course of conduct involving the multiple commission of acts referred to in Article 7.1 of the statute directed against the civilians of northern Uganda. That chamber also held that the LRA was an organization and that the LRA engaged in a widespread and systematic attack pursuant to a policy to attack the civilian population. The prosecution refers, Your Honors, to paragraphs 123 to 143 and 2798 to 2803 of the Ongwen trial judgment. Your Honors, the prosecution has submitted its pre-confirmation brief and its list of evidence, and the prosecution will now focus on describing the common aspects of all 7 attacks. Firstly, Your Honors, the IDP camps were created by the government of Uganda to provide a safe haven for the population in the Acholi, Lango, and Tessa regions to protect them from the violence being perpetuated by the LRA. In the attacks, the LRA applied similar tactics, including surrounding the camps, then sending in fighters armed with firearms and machetes. Witnesses describe the LRA attackers as moving in groups of 2, 3, or 4 as they targeted the camps in sections. Some would target the barracks, others would target the trading centers, and ultimately they also targeted areas that were clearly occupied by the civilian residents living in the IDP camps. Your Honors, the prosecution pauses to look very briefly at the LRA's use of children as child soldiers in those attacks. And the evidence establishes that in all of the attacks, children, including those under the age of 15 years, were used to participate in the hostilities. The prosecution will highlight one example here, and that relates to the attack on the Pajule IDP camp. And there's witness P6 at UGA OTP 0144 0072 at paragraph 11. Your Honors, this witness describes seeing several LRA attackers, and from this witness's vantage point, they all appeared to be no more than 14 years old. This witness recalls these attackers threatening them to open the door or they would kill them. This narrative of children being involved in the hostilities is echoed by the other witnesses who survived the attacks on the Abia, Barlonio, Odek, Pagak, Lukodi, and Abok IDP camp. In just 9 months, the LRA attacked these 7 IDP camps, terrorizing thousands of civilians across 4 districts: Pader, Lira, Gulu, and Apache. and these districts were all located in northern Uganda. Your Honors, the prosecution's evidence is extensive, and so the prosecution will focus on highlighting a snapshot of the evidence that demonstrates the extreme violence of the crimes, which is best appreciated by hearing the voices of those who witnessed the crimes and also survived them. During the attack on Abia, witness P51 at UGA OTP 0069-0592 at paragraph 56 recalls hearing a commander ordering his fighters to get clubs and to beat the civilians. This witness was severely beaten to a state of unconsciousness and was left with a permanent scar to her face. Witness P57 at UGA OTP 0069-0515 at paragraphs 48 and 51, he participated in the attack on Barlonio, and this witness recalls that Odiambo ordered them to kill everybody in the camp, even the insects. In this witness's words, they went inside the camp and killed men, women, and children. Witness P205 at UGA OTP 000-00656 at pages 43 to 44, also an LRA insider, testified in the Ongwen trial, and he recounts that Dominic Ongwen ordered LRA fighters to go and attack the Odek IDP camp and that they were not to leave anything behind. Ongwen further told them to abduct boys, those fit to be in the army, those above 18 years should be killed, and good girls should be abducted. Witness P11 at UGA OTP 0069 at 0202 at paragraph 29 survived the attack on Pagak IDP camp, and this witness recalls hearing the LRA fighters during the attack shouting, "Whatever you see that breeds should be killed." Witness P410 at UGA OTP 000-00627 at page 60 recalls the LRA commanders telling them to kill whoever they saw walking or alive in the camps or barracks. Witness P187 at UGA OTP 000-00637 at page 31 survived the attack on Lukodi, and this witness observed, and I quote, "They came prepared and ready to kill. They wanted to kill people." Madam President, Your Honors, during and in the aftermath of the attacks, the LRA killed hundreds of civilians. These persons were civilians taking no active part in the hostilities. The prosecution has identified over 600 victims who are listed in the annexes E2I to E8-1I, which was submitted with the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief. Across the attacks, Your Honors, the LRA adopted a common pattern. They killed their victims by stabbing, hacking them to death with machetes, beating them to death, shooting at them, and bombing their houses and structures, resulting in fatalities. For Pajule, witness P67 at UGA OTP 000-00611 at page 27 recounts that an LRA escort of about 9 or 10 years old was ordered to kill a person by the name of Pangarisio, and this young child fired 3 bullets at the head of Pangarisio, killing him. After this victim was killed, the LRA robbed his corpse, searching and taking money from his pocket. For Abia, witness P20 at UGA OTP 0069 at 0574 at paragraphs 64 to 65. At the time, this witness was a mother with young children, and she recounts that as she was walking, she was scolded by one of the LRA fighters as she was struggling with her child strapped to her back and also struggling with carrying looted items. She recounts that the LRA fighter untied the child from her back and threw the child into a river. And this baby girl was carried away and she drowned, she died. Your Honors, this witness was also left seriously injured. During the attack on Barlonio, this was the most intense of all the attacks, and it has the greatest number of fatalities, numbering of at least 313 civilians. The prosecution's evidence shows that at least 33 of the victims were children. With your permission, the prosecution will show a video of some of the survivors of the attack on Barlonio IDP camp. As a caution, the images may be disturbing. To protect the privacy and dignity of the persons who were filmed, the prosecution has blurred their faces, and this video was recorded in the Lira Hospital, where many of the victims were being treated. And this video is taken from UGA OTP 0021 to 0006, and the video will play without sound for about 45 seconds, and it captures a series of selected images, scenes, which shows the injuries that were sustained. Your Honors, the images speak for themselves, and as shown in the video, survivors included both adults and children, men, women, boys, and girls. Moving on to Odek, We have witness P325, and this is at UGA OTP 0264 at 0242 at paragraph 24. And this witness recalls finding the bodies of a grandmother and her grandson, and this child was still strapped to the back of his deceased grandmother. This witness also saw during the attack LRA fighters shooting at a heavily pregnant woman who was known to them as Asiro Monia, and she was fatally injured, Your Honors. Both mother and unborn baby died. For Pagak, the LRA forced the victims, many of the victims, out of the camp and took them to a nearby area where they were killed. Witness P12 at UGA OTP 0069 at 0002 at paragraphs 42 to 44 provides a complete narrative of how many of the victims of Pagak were killed. And witness 12 describes LRA fighters as holding torches at their feet and their heads as they were forced to lay face down on the ground. And these LRA fighters had wooden branches. I'll read it directly from her statement, Your Honors, starting at paragraph 43. And this witness states, several rebels started beating us, one after the other. They beat 9 people in the line to death. The 10th person was my husband. The person in line next to my husband was a lady, and then it was me. I lifted my head to see what was happening and saw that my husband was beaten to death. The rebels told me, "What are you looking at? If you continue looking, we'll shoot you." Your Honors, several residents, including this witness, was left severely injured, while many others died as a result of the severe beating that the LRA rebels delivered that night. For Lukodi, children were not spared during the attack, as witness P187 at UGA OTP 0000636 at page 21 testified in the Ongwen trial that he saw LRA fighters putting children in bags and beating them to death and throwing some of these children who were placed in the bags away into the bush. He also saw the LRA fighters throw 2 babies around 2 months to 3 months old, and this witness knows them by the name Kana and Lamunu, and they were thrown into the fire. For Abok, the prosecution highlights the experience of one survivor, and this is witness 293 at UGA OTP 000-00619 at page 40. And this witness testified in the Ongwen trial, and he states that after the attack, he went and he discovered his father, and his father had been beaten so severely that his brain spilled from his skull. Your Honors, as the witnesses, the witnesses' account demonstrate, the LRA fighters killed many civilians, and they killed them indiscriminately: men, women, girls, boys, and babies. Your Honors, I'll now turn to highlight the evidence in relation to those who survived. And the prosecution's case is that at least 194 civilians the LRA attempted to kill them. However, they survived due to independent circumstances. And again, the pattern of violence was similar. They were shot at, they were beaten, they were stabbed, and they were locked into buildings, and these buildings were set on fire. And for Abia, the prosecution is highlighting the case of a female child. She was around 10 years old at the time, and her hospital records note a penetrating injury to the abdomen through the chest, including injury to her kidney and liver. From the attack on Barlonio IDP camp, a female, 48 years old, and the hospital record notes a shrapnel hit to the lumbar region, which is to the survivor's lower back, and a gunshot wound to the right thigh and a cut to the left breast. For the attack on Odek IDP camp, a female sustained a gunshot injury to the back of her neck. From the attack on Pagak IDP camp, on your screen, Your Honors, is perhaps a photograph of one of the youngest survivors, and this is taken at UGA OTP 0023-0410. And this was an 8.5-month-old baby. And during the attack, the LRA rebels beat this baby to a state of unconsciousness using a stick. And this baby had to undergo a skull X-ray and was so severely injured that the hospital record notes that the baby could not breastfeed due to their injuries. For the attack on Lukodi, again, we have a 7-year-old child, and the LRA fighters beat the 7-year-old to a state of unconsciousness, and she sustained a lifelong injury to her eye. And then we have a buck where, for witness 279, she recounts the LRA fighters beating and strangling her to a state of unconsciousness. And when she recovered consciousness, she noticed that she was bleeding from the mouth and the nose. Your Honors, these representative cases are taken from Annexes E3-2I to E8-2I, which were filed with the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief. The prosecution will now go to those who were abducted and enslaved. And earlier, my colleague Leonie Von Braun addressed the chamber on Mr. Kony's standing orders to abduct and integrate people into the LRA, especially women and children. And in the aftermath of the attacks in Pajule, Abia, Odek, Pagak, Lukodi, and Abok, the LRA abducted and enslaved hundreds of civilians as part of the plan to sustain the LRA. Some were released, some were killed, others managed to escape early on, but many were integrated into the LRA as part of Mr. Kony's aim to create a new tribe. For clarity, Your Honors, those who were detained for less than a week are counted for count 10, and those who were enslaved for longer periods of time are counted under count 15, and my colleagues will later today and tomorrow address the chamber on those charges. Your Honors, the survivors share a similar narrative. They recall that some were tied up and forced out of the attacked IDP camps while being guarded by the LRA fighters. Others recall that the LRA fighters beat them as they struggled to carry the luggage, and luggage, Your Honors, stands for the items that they looted from the camps, such as food. Some abductees watched as their relatives were killed, and some abductees were severely beaten or shot, suffering severe injuries. For instance, ODEC survivor, witness P218, at UGA OTP 0238 at 0720 at paragraph 33 states that many men, women, and children were abducted from the camp during the attack, and to his knowledge, most of the women were returned to the camp by the LRA. However, they kept many of the children in the bush with them. Pagak survivor, witness P13 at UGA OTP 0069 at 0176 at paragraphs 38 to 40, describes her brief time in captivity as being forced to carry looted items on her head and being subjected to severe beatings, and this witness lost sight in her eye. Your Honors, the evidence of the LRA's widespread and systematic brutal violence was not only limited to camp residents, it was also directed at the property of the camp residents, and this was across the 7 IDP camps where the LRA fighters looted household goods, livestock, food, and they forced the camp residents to carry these items out of the camp. Your Honors, for the Pajule attack, there is witness P67 at UGA OTP 0000611 at page 36, and this witness states that one of the primary roles of some of the LRA fighters as they attacked in groups was to go into the camps and to take away the items that they looted during the attack. Your Honors, even the reports of the LRA commanders who led the attack also establishes the prosecution's evidence concerning the aim of the LRA as it relates to looting and destruction. For example, Otti, when he reported the attack to Mr. Kony on the Pagak IDP camp, and this, Your Honors, is found at UPDF logbook UGA OTP 0255 at 0228 at page 0249, detailed that he had burned 500 huts. For Lukodi, Dominic Ongwen also made similar reports to Mr. Kony. Your Honors, earlier today, Deputy Prosecutor Niang had shown a Barlonio video, and from that video, one could see signs of destroyed buildings. On your screens, Your Honors, are photographs of the aftermath of the attack on the camps of Abia, Barlonio, Pagak, and Lukodi. As shown here, Your Honors, the structures appear to have been destroyed by fire. Your Honors, turning to the issue of persecution, the prosecution has throughout today highlighted the persecutory behavior of the LRA under the orders of Mr. Kony, and the acts and experiences of the survivors, which I have highlighted today, demonstrates this persecutory intent. Your Honors, the prosecution could only provide a snapshot of the extensive body of evidence coming from its over 180 witnesses. The prosecution submits that there are substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Kony is criminally responsible for the attacks detailed at counts 1 through to 13. Your Honors, I thank the court for its time and attention. And I'll now turn over to my colleague Sanyu Endegiri, who will address the Chamber on the systemic crimes. And Ms. Endegiri is a national of Uganda. I thank you.
May it please the court, my name is Sanyu Ndagire, and as my colleague just mentioned, I will be addressing the systemic crimes committed by Joseph Kony and his co-perpetrators against girls and women. And just to inform the chamber, my presentation, my submissions will be about 40 minutes long, or a bit longer, so I request the indulgence of the chamber if we could conclude a little after 4 p.m., if it's all right.
We'll see how it goes. Go on. Begin.
Thank you. Your Honors, from at least 1st July 2002 to 31st December 2005, at least thousands of girls and women were abducted by the LRA from villages, schools, IDP camps, and locations across northern Uganda, pursuant to Joseph Kony's standing orders. They were forcibly integrated into the LRA. The girls became Ting Ting, a term that the LRA used for young girls who performed domestic chores and looked after the LRA commanders' children. The women became the forced wives of these commanders and were forced to have sexual intercourse with the commanders, bear their children, and perform domestic duties. To support the figure of at least thousands of women and girls as charged in the document containing the charges, we rely on the demographic analysis of returnees that my colleague Ms. von Braun referred to earlier this morning. The prosecution submits that there are substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Kony is criminally responsible as an indirect co-perpetrator for the crimes charged in counts 15 to 22, 24, and 27 to 29 of the document containing the charges, with respect to women and girls that were forcibly integrated into the LRA from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005 in northern Uganda. Mr. Kony is charged with the following crimes listed in these counts: enslavement, the inhumane act of forced marriage, rape, torture, other inhumane acts of severe abuse and mistreatment, cruel treatment, gender persecution, as well as sexual slavery and forced pregnancy. Mr. Kony is also criminally responsible as an indirect co-perpetrator for the crimes charged in counts 1, 6 to 11, and 14, with respect to the LRA's attack on Luala Girls' School on or about 24th June 2003 that resulted in pillaging, as well as enslavement, torture, other inhumane acts of severe abuse and mistreatment, cruel treatment, and persecution of at least 70 schoolgirls. I will first address the first two counts of the crime of enslavement with which Mr. Kony is charged. To avoid double counting of the victims, the prosecution distinguishes between the crime of enslavement in counts 10 and 15 as follows. Count 10 relates to abducted civilians who were released, who escaped or were killed by the LRA in the immediate aftermath of the attacks. These include at least 12 schoolgirls abducted by the LRA from Douala Girls School and who managed to escape shortly after their abduction or were released in the days after the attack on the school. Count 15 relates to women and girls that were abducted and forcibly integrated into the LRA for protracted periods of time as ting-ting and forced wives. They include at least thousands of women and girls abducted from across northern Uganda during the charged period, including the schoolgirls from Douala Girls School who were not released or who were unable to escape. The evidence shows, with regard to the crimes of enslavement, forced marriage, and sexual slavery, that the abducted girls and women who were not released or were unable to escape were subsequently distributed without their consent to LRA commanders and fighters as forced wives and ting-ting to engage in acts of a sexual nature, including sexual intercourse, and to perform domestic duties. Witness P214, who was herself abducted at the age of 17, states, and I quote, Kony decided to distribute us girls to different commanders as wives. Kony was seated under a tree and called us. He looked at us and told his security guards to pick 4 girls for him to stay in his home. Kony then told the top commanders to also pick girls. The commanders pointed at the girls they wanted, and then their security guards would take the selected girls to their homes. After that, Kony allocated the rest of the girls to lower-ranking commanders. Each commander received 1 girl. The girls did not have a choice but to go with the commanders. We were told on where to go, and if one resisted, she was beaten. I saw that some of the girls resisted, and they started crying when they were forcefully taken away. End quote. I refer your honors to UGA OTP 02340026 at page 0034. The evidence shows that the practice of abducting women and girls was rampant across the LRA during the charged period. An example of this practice was the LRA's abduction of about 70 schoolgirls from the Douala Girls School on or about 24th June 2003, which I now turn to. The 2025 dynamic Google Earth map, which appears on your screens, depicts where Douala Girls School is in Uganda. The map and its annotations are premised on the public Annex D of the prosecution's pre-confirmation brief and paragraph 154 of the pre-confirmation brief, which also cites the underlying evidence of the route that the abducted schoolgirls were forced to take and their subsequent distribution within the LRA. Douala Girls School is situated in the Douala village of Kaberamaido district in Teso in northeastern Uganda. And in June 2003, about 230 girls were resident at this boarding school. By 2003, the LRA were conducting operations in the Teso region in compliance with Mr. Kony's standing orders to abduct women and girls and his persecutory campaign for the LRA to target schoolgirls collectively on the basis of their age and gender. By 23rd June 2003, Stockery Brigade's Mendu Battalion Commander, Charles Kapere, and Wake Up Battalion Commander, Okello Lagulu, were together in the Amuria area, which is about 50 kilometers east of Luala Girls School. And I refer your honors to logbook UGA OTP 0068 0146, page 0270 and 0272. Lagulu and Kapere complied with the instructions that their commander, Charles Tabule, had given them, which was to identify schools in order to attack and abduct schoolgirls. Lagulu and Kapere selected 30 fighters from their battalions to attack Luala Girls School, and Opio Achea, who was Lagulu's second in command, led the attack on the school in the early hours of 24th June 2003. Witnesses P68, P2, and P15 recall that the fighters that attacked the school were armed with machetes, knives, AK-47s, rocket-propelled grenades, and PK machine guns, and that the LRA fighters also included children under the age of 15. The features that we will be identifying on this 2025 Google Earth image of Luala Girls School is also used as a visual aid and premised on a sketch which is at UGA OTP 01390077 and was drawn by witness P75. This image depicts what the school premises looked like in 2003. The direction north is to your left on the image. You can also see the main gate, the classrooms, the dormitories, and the staff quarters. A week prior to the attack, the school teachers and students at Luala Girls School heard from civilians in the area that the LRA were in Amuria and Katakwi and that they were coming to abduct the students. This is from statements UGA OTP 0043, 0131, page 0134, and statement UGA OTP 0139, 0047 at paragraph 57. Upon learning of this impending attack, some students were lucky enough to be taken home by their parents before the LRA fighters got to the school. Other students managed to run away when the fighters attacked the school in the early hours of 24th June 2003. However, witnesses P2, P1079, P1084, P15, P21, P129, P79, and P4 were not so fortunate. They were amongst the 70 schoolgirls ranging between the ages of 13 to 19 that were abducted by the LRA fighters. At about 2:30 a.m. on 24th June 2003, P68 was patrolling the school grounds when he suddenly heard screams from the dormitories. As he approached the generator room, which was across the dormitories on the campus, P68 saw through the pouring rain LRA fighters carrying flashing torchlights while moving in and out of the dormitories. He recalls that the fighters were wearing military uniforms and carrying guns. This is at UGA OTP 01390007, paragraphs 48 and 54. P2 was asleep in Saskia dormitory when she was suddenly woken up by a short LRA fighter who she estimates was about 13 years old and carried a rocket-propelled grenade. With him were 4 other LRA fighters who were boys, and they carried ammunition magazines on their waists, as well as knives, guns, and machetes in their hands. This is at UGA OTP 0070-0002 at page 5. P15 was a 13-year-old student and attempted to run away when the LRA fighters came into her dormitory room. An LRA fighter caught her and brought her back to the group of the abducted girls assembled outside in the rain by the LRA fighters. Statement UGA OTP 0043-0131, pages 0133 and 0135. Some of the schoolgirls, like P4, P21, P79, were barefoot, and others like P2, P15, P1079, and P1084 were still in their nightclothes and school uniforms. The LRA fighters then bound the schoolgirls together with rope or bed sheets from their dormitories, which they secured around the girls' waists. They then beat and forced the girls to carry looted food, medicine, clothes, and mattresses while marching them out of the school gate. The first pit stop that the fighters made was Otoboy. It was here that the LRA fighters broke into shops at Otoboy's trading center and looted food and other items like cooking oil and soap, which they then forced the enslaved schoolgirls to carry. A number of the schoolgirls managed to escape, while the LRA fighters were pillaging Otoboy's trading center. But P4 and P15 were not successful. LRA fighters beat them severely with sticks and machetes, and then beat the rest of the enslaved girls across their backs and their buttocks. P4 saw one girl beaten so badly that she was bleeding, and P21 was beaten with a wire lock. Statement UGA OTP 0139-0097, page 0102, and statement UGA D26 0025-0097 at page 0100. P41 recounts that when the enslaved girls arrived at Charles Kapere's location, Kapere warned them not to try and escape because they were going to be taken to someone of a higher rank. Kapere then released about 12 of the schoolgirls who could not walk well and those who were considered too old. This is at UGA OTP 0221-0077 at page 89. On 25th June 2003, Charles Kapere relayed the success of the attack on the girls' school to his commander, Charles Tabule, over the radio. He confirmed having attacked Otoboy Mission in Kaveramaido district and that 56 girls were abducted from a secondary school there, but that most of them were ugly. Logbook UGA OTP 0068 0146 at page 0277. Charles Tabule instructed Kapere not to release the girls until his arrival and said that even if the girls are ugly, the LRA will not mind so long as they are fit to be trained as soldiers. Logbook UGA OTP 0241 2490, page 2680, and logbook UGA OTP 0242 6018 at page 6047. By 26 June 2003, the remaining enslaved schoolgirls from Luala Girls' School had arrived in Orungo. The girls were then split between Lagulu and Kapere and taken to Charles Tabule's brigade in Orungo, where all 4 Stokri battalions were gathered. Witnesses P1079 and P21 recall that to get to Tabule's location, the girls had to cross swamps filled with water that was chest high, and that all the while the girls were still tied together at the waist. The LRA radio communication at 1100 hours on the 27th of June 2003 confirms that Tabule was now with Lagulu. Witnesses P41, P0136, and P10 confirm that the schoolgirls remained with Tabule for about 2 nights and then were split into smaller groups within his brigade of about 5 girls each. These smaller groups were then distributed to LRA commanders Tabule, Kapere, Okuti, and Labongo. On 28th June 2003, Oti reported over the radio that he was in Obalanga. On or about 30th June 2003, the remaining girls were taken by Kapere and Tabule to Vincent Oti in Olyelo, Widiel, in Padere district. And on 1st July 2003, they were then taken onwards to Lokole and Kalongo. On 5th July 2003, Kony, over the radio, asked Tabule whether the abducted girls from Teso and Lango are beautiful, to which Tabule responded, "Some are ugly, and only 4 are beautiful." Tabule further inquired whether Kony wanted any of them for a wife. I refer your honors to logbook UGA OTP 0060 0149 at pages 0175 to 0176. The following day, which was 6th July 2003, Kony instructed for the recruits from Teso to be kept well. This is in logbook UGA OTP 0068 0146 at page 0298. 4 enslaved girls were ultimately taken to Tim Palukok on 7th July 2003 by Vincent Oti, Tabule, and Kapere to meet Mr. Kony in person. Tim Palukok was a hideout where Kony stayed when he was in Uganda, and it was located in Kitgum district, Orom sub-county, close to the borders of Kidepo Game Reserve and the border of South Sudan. And Tim Palukok, for your honors, is a distance of about 200 kilometers from Luala Girls' School, where these girls had been taken from. Kony selected 2 of the girls, including victim 2, whose victimization we refer to at paragraphs 167 to 169 of the pre-confirmation brief. And these girls were to stay in his household permanently as his wives. And then Vincent Oti kept some of the enslaved girls for himself. The LRA radio communication of 22nd July 2003, which is recorded in logbook UGA OTP 0068-0146 at page 0324, reveals that Tabule was ordered by Kony to distribute the rest of the enslaved Luala schoolgirls, who were about 23 in number by this time, to LRA commanders Ochan Bunya, Okoto Diambo, and Book Abudema. The memorial plaque that you now see on your screens, Your Honors, was installed and officially unveiled on the Luala Girls' School grounds by Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni in 2015 in honor of the 70 schoolgirls who were abducted by the LRA on or about 24th June 2003. And this is UGA OTP 00000017. I will now focus on the evidence regarding the systemic crimes against abducted women and girls integrated into the LRA, which we have charged at counts 15 to 22, 24, and 27 to 29. The prosecution alleges that at least thousands of women and girls were targeted as part of the LRA's persecutory campaign for abduction and integration into the LRA on the premise of their gender. The abducted women and girls were treated by the LRA like chattels or spoils of war to be awarded to commanders as their wives and ting-ting. The prosecution provides in Annex E10 to the pre-confirmation brief a list of 204 individually identifiable women and girls who were abducted and forcefully integrated into the LRA as forced wives and ting-ting during the charged period. These women and girls were abducted by the LRA from the following locations: Omoro on 18th June 2003, Ogalai in Katakwi district in June 2003, from Luala Girls' School on or about 24th June 2003, from Pajule IDP camp on or about 10th October 2003, and from Omia Pachwa around December 2004. Of these 204 women and girls, 117 were forced wives during their captivity by the LRA and were subjected to the crimes of enslavement, the inhumane act of forced marriage, rape, torture, other inhumane acts of severe abuse and mistreatment, cruel treatment, gender persecution, as well as sexual slavery and forced pregnancy. Kony devised the rule that the girls who had begun menstruating were considered mature enough to become wives. Witness P142 estimated that there were more than 100 wives in senior brigade alone from the year 2003 to 2004. In the Dominic Ongwen trial, witness P70 testified that most of the LRA commanders in the bush had wives, and that some fighters had 10 wives, some had 20 wives, and that Kony himself had approximately 90 wives. This is transcript UGA OTP 00000599 at page 39. On your screen, Your Honors, is photographic evidence of Mr. Kony's rule and the LRA practice regarding forced marriage. These photographs, which were provided by witness P70, depict various commanders with their wives and children while in the bush. We have blurred their faces, the faces of the women and children, for their privacy. The enlarged photo that you now see depicts LRA Commander Raska Lukuya with his then women who were wives and children. One witness lists over a dozen of Kony's wives by name. This is in Statement UGA OTP 00001146 at page 13. Witnesses P23, P48, P99, P0226, and P15 also corroborate the large number of wives that Mr. Kony had. Mr. Kony would select his wives from the young girls and women brought to him by the brigade commanders, as was the case with victim 1 and victim 2. Forced wives had to maintain an exclusive sexual relationship with the LRA commander to whom they were distributed, which meant that they were forced to have sexual intercourse with him on demand. They also had to bear children, perform domestic chores, carry out labor, and do what their husband instructed them to. According to witness P351, girls used to do a lot of work, including carrying food and cooking, and in case of an attack, carry everything. This is Statement UGA OTP 0263 0002 at page 13. As a result of the forced sexual intercourse that the abducted women and girls endured within the coercive environment of the LRA, at least hundreds of women and girls became pregnant, having no choice as to whether, when, or with whom to have a child. The expectation of women to produce children was central to Kony's motive, which was to create a new Acholi tribe. And this was implemented through the abduction, enslavement, and forced marriage of women. Further evidence of this comes from the victims themselves. P227 stated that her forced husband, Dominic Ongwen, told her that she must have a child. She also heard from other forced wives that Kony said each woman must have 15 children. Statement UGA OTP 0235 0125 at page 0138. P23 states, and I quote, "Girls and women were abducted for two main reasons. First, because they helped to cook. Second, because they produced children. Mature girls were given to the commanders as their wives. Girls were considered mature once they had their first menstrual period. This was a rule made by Kony. Before that, they were not allowed to be touched. This was another rule by Kony." End quote.
Counsel, if I may interrupt you, you'd asked for a few minutes. May I inquire what exactly is your request? We are minded to grant up to 15 minutes today, but we will not be able to grant more. Is it possible for you then to wrap up
Yes.
in the 15-minute period?
Yes, I will be
Very
able
well
to.
then. You may continue.
And just for the record, Your Honors, the quote that I read out was Statement UGA OTP 0150 0063 at page 0071. Pregnant women and girls were not free to leave the LRA. The LRA subjected them to the same coercive and violent environment, including forced exclusive sexual relationships and sexual abuse. The LRA unlawfully confined these women and girls during their pregnancies with the intent to carry out grave violations of international law, including continued enslavement, rape, torture, and the inhumane act of forced marriage. This included at least one of the victim's children fathered by Kony, who was born in Uganda during the charge period, while other children of Kony were conceived and born outside of the charge period and outside of Uganda. These witnesses confirmed the existence of a pattern of forced pregnancy with which Mr. Kony is charged. The LRA specifically targeted young girls who they referred to as Ting Ting for abduction and enslavement. Because of their young age, the LRA considered them less likely to have sexually transmitted diseases. These Ting Ting included at least 11 prosecution witnesses, although the evidence suggests that the number of girls subjected to this status or role was much higher. And we refer you to report UGA OTP 00001133 at pages 3 to 4. Annex E10 of the pre-confirmation brief indicates that from the 204 individually identifiable women and girls, about 48 of the girls were Ting Ting in the LRA during the charged period. One witness recalls that there were 10 Ting Ting in Vincent Ortiz's household in 2003. Statement UGA OTP 00430131 at page 0141. P140, a former Ting Ting of an LRA commander, was tasked with carrying goods, collecting water, cooking, and taking care of children and babies. P467, a former child soldier, stated that the girls' role was to cook and carry luggage, and that when they were old enough, they would become wives. Statement UGA OTP 00000510 at page 16. The young age of these girls did not guarantee protection from sexual violence, however. P264 recalls that the LRA commanders had sex with their Ting Ting who were too young to be married. Statement UGA OTP 0256-0139 at page 0163. I now turn to the evidence of the torture or cruel treatment, other inhumane acts of severe abuse and mistreatment that the girls and women in the LRA were subjected to during the charged period. Abducted women and girls were subjected to a coercive and violent environment, including various forms of physical and psychological violence, often for a protracted period of time. Many were severely beaten and threatened with violence for resisting sexual intercourse, other sexual violence, or for merely breaking LRA rules. In the words of witness P236, if there is anything wrong, you are beaten. If you do anything wrong, you are beaten. Statement UGA OTP 00000784 at page 13. In some cases, women and girls were beaten or killed for attempting to escape. For instance, P227 saw a girl beaten so badly that she could not eat. P374 describes how 2 girls were killed by LRA fighters. This is statement UGA 0263-0023 at page 0041. The LRA radio communication of 18th December 2002 reveals that Kony ordered the beating of a woman with 50 strokes for refusing to hand over a young child as a babysitter, or Ting Ting. This is logbook UGA OTP 00650002 at page 0115. Some abducted women and girls were also forced to beat or participate in the killing of other abductees who tried to escape. P0139 was made to beat a female abductee with a stick, a big stick, until she was about to die. P15 recalls how 2 boys that attempted to escape were beaten until they were nearly dead, and that afterwards the 2 boys were stabbed to death by LRA fighters. In one instance, an abducted girl was made to carry the severed head of an abductee who had been killed for trying to escape. This is statement UGA OTP 00000622, pages 25 to 26. Witness P1079 recalls the punishment that one abducted girl received for attempting to escape. The girl was forced to remove her blouse, and with a burning hot machete, the sign of the cross was carved into her bare back. The girl was then forced to carry a bag on her back. Statement UGA OTP 00001403 at paragraph 83. Abducted women and girls suffered severe physical and mental pain and suffering as a result of the systematic physical and psychological abuse in the coercive environment and poor living conditions they endured. This included constant hunger and dehydration, injuries sustained during sexual intercourse or while performing domestic chores, poor hygiene, intake of substances triggering menstruation, pregnancy, childbirth, and postnatal complications, all in an environment in which they were deprived access to medical care. One witness describes that neither she nor the babies she bore had access to medical care in the time relevant to the charges. Shortly after giving birth, the witness had to cut her baby's umbilical cord herself using grass in the bush, and then sealed the umbilical cord with a thread from the wrapper she was wearing. Statement UGA OTP 00001146 at pages 20 to 21. Witness P1079 states that pregnant women within the LRA who went into labor had to give birth to their babies while on the move in the bush. P1079 once saw the wife of an LRA commander give birth to a baby as she walked together with the group through the bush. Statement UGA OTP 00001403 at paragraph 76. This continued deprivation of liberty, sexual and reproductive autonomy, and the subjugation to forced marriage and sexual intercourse against their will caused great suffering and serious injury to the women's bodies and their mental and physical health. What you have heard today, Your Honors, is a snapshot of the totality of evidence regarding Mr. Kony's role and responsibility for the gender-based crimes committed against the girls abducted from Nwala Girls' School, as well as many other women and girls abducted from across northern Uganda and that were forcibly integrated into the LRA. We submit that the charges against him should be confirmed in relation to counts 1, 6 to 11, and 14 regarding the attack on Nwala Girls' School, and counts 15 to 22, 24, and counts 27 to 29 with respect to the women and girls that were forcibly integrated into the LRA from at least 1st July 2002 until 31st December 2005 in northern Uganda. And this concludes my submissions. Tomorrow, my colleague, Ms. Henderson, will address the crimes that were committed against children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. All right, this would be then the end of our day. We will continue tomorrow. I'm reminding you at 9:30. All right.
All rise. We would away.
A good day to all.
Okay, that is it for today. Kony case confirmation of charges hearing opening. The one has ended. All right, and now we're waiting for tomorrow to see what will be happening. The International Criminal Court is trying to find out that the evidence given is really holds water, that Kony really can be persecuted, can be brought to court and testify against his atrocities. But let's wait and see exactly what will be happening, what will be coming up. I will be here to let you know.